When my son told me I wouldn't be welcome at his house for Christmas, I smiled, walked to my car, and made one call. By New Year's, their mortgage payments were gone. And that was only the first step in my plan. Justice had to be restored, and arrogance had to be punished. You won't believe what I did next. Before we continue, make sure to subscribe to the channel and tell us in the comments where you're listening from. "I could make my famous turkey this year," I said, sinking deeper into Daniel's leather couch. "The one with the sage stuffing your mother used to love. Remember how she always said it was better than a grandmother's?" The words lingered in the warm air, mixing with the scent of Clarissa's expensive vanilla candles. Daniel shifted beside me, his wedding ring catching the glow from their 12-foot Christmas tree. Something in his posture changed, shoulders curling inward, like he was bracing for impact. "Dad, unfortunately, you won't be welcome here for Christmas." The words hit like a punch to the chest. I blinked, certain I'd misheard. "What do you mean? Why wouldn't I be welcome?" Daniel's eyes stayed locked on the marble coffee table, the same one I'd helped him choose last spring when Clarissa decided their old furniture wasn't sophisticated enough. "It's just easier this way, Dad. You know how her family is about traditions. They have their own way of doing things." His voice shrank with every word. I looked around the room, the silk curtains I'd paid for when Clarissa complained about privacy, the hardwood floors bought with my second mortgage, the crown molding that maxed out my credit card. Every inch of this house carried my fingerprints, my sacrifices, my love for my son. "Their own way," I repeated slowly. "And what way is that, Daniel?" He flinched. "Dad, please don't make this harder than it has to be." Through the kitchen archway, I spotted Clarissa's new KitchenAid mixer, the professional-grade one she'd insisted she needed for her holiday baking phase that lasted exactly 3 weeks. $2,000 of my money, probably used twice since October. "Where will I spend Christmas then?" I asked, quieter than I meant to. Daniel's face crumpled. "Maybe you could, I don't know, visit Aunt Teresa, or we could do something the weekend after." The weekend after. Like Christmas was just another appointment to be rescheduled. I stood, my knees aching after 8 years of carrying this burden alone. "I see." "Dad, wait!" But I was already moving toward the door, past the family photos where my face grew smaller in each frame, past the coat closet stuffed with Clarissa's endless jackets. My hand closed around the doorknob, cold, solid. "Son," I said without turning, "tell Clarissa's parents, Feliz Navidad." The December air slapped my face as I walked to my truck. Behind me, Daniel called my name once, then the soft click of the door sealed it shut. Final. Absolute. I sat in the driver's seat, engine off, watching Christmas lights twinkle in windows of houses I'd never be welcome in. My phone buzzed, probably Daniel, ready with empty promises and guilt. I didn't answer. Instead, I turned the key and drove into the darkness, leaving behind the warm glow of the house I'd bought but would never belong in. The heater hummed against the cold as I navigated familiar streets. Southridge stretched around me, every corner holding memories of the man I used to be, the man who believed family meant everything, who'd give his last dollar to see his son smile. That man was a fool. At the red light on 29th and Grandview, I watched a young father load Christmas presents into his SUV. His kids pressed their faces to the glass, breath fogging with excitement. Once that had been Daniel and me, before Clarissa, before I became nothing more than a walking ATM with inconvenient emotions. The numbers started rolling in my head like a broken slot machine. $2,800 every month for 5 years. Last spring, my calculator had given up when I finally totaled it. $140,000. More than Maria and I had saved for our entire retirement. Gone. I pressed the accelerator harder than necessary when the light turned green. The truck growled in agreement. Fifth Avenue. That's where I'd refinanced my house. Our house, Maria's and mine, to cover their down payment. I remember the loan officer's pity. "Mr. Alvarez, are you sure about this? You're putting a lot at risk for someone else's investment." Someone else's investment. Not my son's future. Not my family's security. Someone else's investment. Lincoln Street, the bank where I'd taken out a second mortgage when Daniel lost his job 2 years ago. "Just temporary, Dad, just until I get back on my feet." Clarissa had stood behind him, a $700 purse slung over her shoulder, nodding with practiced sympathy, while silently calculating how much my desperation was worth. Nothing, as it turned out. My desperation was worth nothing to them. I pulled into my driveway, the one with the cracked concrete I couldn't afford to fix because every spare dollar disappeared into their perfect suburban fantasy. The porch light flickered, another repair I've been putting off. Inside, the house felt hollow without Marisol's laughter, without the warmth of family gatherings that would never happen again. My phone rang as I fumbled with my keys, the shrill tone echoing off the empty walls. Clarissa's name flashed on the screen, probably wanting to explain why I wasn't good enough for her parents' delicate sensibilities. Perfect timing. I'd been waiting 5 years to have this conversation. I answered on the 4th ring, letting her wait just long enough to wonder if I'd pick up at all. "David." Her voice dripped with false sweetness, the same tone she used when asking me to cover their water bill or property taxes. "I heard about the little misunderstanding with Daniel." "Misunderstanding?" I leaned against my kitchen counter, still wearing my coat. "I don't think there's any misunderstanding, Clarissa. You made your position quite clear." "Look, I know this seems harsh, but you have to understand my parents' perspective. They're very traditional people. They expect a certain atmosphere during the holidays." "A certain atmosphere?" I repeated. "And what atmosphere is that?" A pause. Shopping bags rustled in the background, probably filled with things bought using money that should have gone to their mortgage payment, money that was apparently my responsibility. "Well, they're not used to your kind of cooking, all that spicy food and loud music. And frankly, David, they're educated people. They expect conversations about current events, literature, art, you know." The words landed like a punch. 8 years of biting my tongue, of swallowing insults for Daniel's sake, of pretending not to notice the way she looked at me like I was some kind of hired help. "My kind of cooking," I said evenly. "You mean the food you ate every Sunday for 3 years when money was tight? The tamales you said reminded you of your grandmother's?" "That was different. We were appreciative then. But now with my parents, now with your parents, you can't have the working class embarrassment at your fancy dinner table." The sweetness vanished. "Don't be dramatic, David. This isn't about race, it's about class. My father graduated summa cum laude from Washington State. My mother speaks 4 languages. They summer in the Hamptons. What exactly would you contribute to dinner conversation? Stories about laying tile?" Heat surged in my chest, but my voice stayed steady. "I built a business from nothing after your husband's grandfather died. I've employed over 50 people. I've paid more in taxes than your father made in his best year." "Money isn't everything, David. Breeding matters. Education matters. And frankly, Marisol understood her place better than you understand yours." The line went dead silent. She'd crossed it. The line I didn't even know existed until she stomped across it in her designer heels. "What did you say about my wife?" "I'm just saying she knew how to blend in better. She didn't make waves. She understood that some spaces weren't meant for her." My hand tightened around the phone until my knuckles went white. "Clarissa," my voice dropped to something I didn't recognize. "I want you to listen very carefully. This conversation is over. We're done pretending to be family. You can't just—" "We're done," I repeated, and ended the call. I set the phone down carefully on the counter, my hands surprisingly steady. Around me the kitchen felt different, smaller but somehow cleaner, like a weight had been lifted from the air itself.
I walked to my desk in the corner and pulled out the manila folder I'd been avoiding for months. Bank statements, mortgage papers, 5 years of automatic transfers that had bled me dry while they lived like royalty. Time to stop the bleeding. Part 4. The first decision. Canceling the mortgage. The documents spread across my kitchen table like evidence at a crime scene. 5 years of bank statements, each one showing the same automatic transfer. $2,800 on the 15th of every month, vanishing from my account into theirs. A paper trail of my own stupidity. I pulled out my calculator and started adding. The first year, $33,600. The second year, another $33,600.
By the third year, I'd stopped buying myself new clothes. By the fourth, I was shopping at discount grocery stores. This year, the fifth year, I've been eating peanut butter sandwiches for lunch just to make ends meet. $143,400. And that wasn't even counting the down payment. Not counting the times I'd covered their utilities when Clarissa's shopping addiction spiraled out of control. Not counting the new roof, the landscaping, the furniture that was apparently essential for their lifestyle. I sat back in my chair, staring at the numbers until they blurred. Marisol's life insurance money, my retirement savings, the college fund we'd started for grandchildren I'd apparently never be allowed to see. All of it. Gone. Poured into a house where I wasn't even welcome for Christmas dinner. I reached for my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found the number for my bank. The automated system offered me options in English and Spanish. How thoughtful. How accommodating to people like me. Customer service, this is Jennifer. How can I help you today? I need to cancel an automatic transfer, I said, my voice steadier than it had been in years. Certainly, sir. I'll need your account number and some verification information. I rattled off the numbers, listening to her type in the background. Professional, efficient, no judgment about why a 62-year-old man was canceling payments to what was probably his son's mortgage. I see the transfer you're referring to, Mr. Alvarez. $2,800 monthly to Wells Fargo, account ending in 7423. How long have you been making this transfer? 5 years. The words tasted bitter. And you want to cancel it effective immediately. I looked around my kitchen, at the outdated appliances I couldn't afford to replace, the walls that needed painting, the windows that leaked cold air because I'd spent my home improvement money on someone else's castle. Effective immediately, I confirmed. Done. The transfer has been canceled. Is there anything else I can help you with today? No, I said, surprised at how good the word felt. No, that's everything. I hung up and sat in the sudden quiet of my house. Outside, December darkness was settling over Spokane. Christmas lights twinkled in windows where families gathered without conditions, without judgment, without the need to hide who they were. For the first time in 5 years, next month's budget would balance. For the first time since Marisol died, I could afford to fix my porch light, buy decent groceries, maybe even take a vacation. I gathered up the bank statements, the mortgage papers, all the evidence of my generosity, and walked to the fireplace. I struck a match and watched 5 years of martyrdom turn to ash. The fire's warmth touched my face, warmer than I'd felt in years. My phone buzzed with a text message, probably Daniel wanting to apologize or Clarissa needing money for something essential like new throw pillows. I didn't check it. Instead, I poured myself a glass of the good whiskey, the bottle I'd been saving for a special occasion that never seemed to come. Tonight felt special enough. I raised my glass to the empty room, to Marisol's photo on the mantel, to the man I used to be, and the man I was becoming. Merry Christmas to me, I said, and meant it. Part 5. Clarissa's Provocation. The next morning arrived crisp and clear, December sunlight streaming through my kitchen windows as I nursed my second cup of coffee. For the first time in years, I wasn't calculating how much money would vanish from my account in 3 days. The freedom tasted better than the Colombian blend I'd finally allowed myself to buy. At exactly 11:47 a.m., my phone rang.
Clarissa's name flashed on the screen like a warning label. "David," she said, her voice carrying that familiar tone of barely concealed impatience. "Look, whatever that was about, we need to focus on practical matters now. My parents need transportation, and you're the only one with time during the day." I set my mug down carefully, watching the steam curl toward the ceiling. "Clarissa, did you forget about our conversation yesterday? Look, whatever that was about, we need to focus on practical matters now. My parents need transportation, and you're the only one with time during the day." The audacity was breathtaking. Less than 24 hours after telling me I wasn't worthy to share Christmas dinner with her family, she expected me to serve as their personal chauffeur. "And you're asking me because—" "Because that's what family does, David. They help each other." Her voice sharpened. "Besides, let's be honest here. You're not my rival. You're too weak to be my rival. So just get in your truck and pick them up." There it was, the final insult, wrapped in a command. "What airline?" I asked quietly. "Alaska Air Flight 447. They'll be at baggage claim carousel 3. And David, they're expecting someone who can handle their luggage properly. Don't embarrass us." I could hear her nails tapping against something hard, probably her granite countertop, the one I'd paid for when she decided laminate wasn't suitable for her dinner parties. "Of course," I said. "I'll take care of everything." "Good. And wear something decent. Maybe that blue shirt you wore to Daniel's graduation. They notice things like that." The line went dead. She hadn't even said thank you. I sat back in my chair, looking at my phone's blank screen. 2 o'clock. Flight 447. Baggage claim. Carousel 3. I glanced at the wall clock above my sink. 10:52 a.m. Plenty of time. I poured myself another cup of coffee, added an extra spoonful of sugar, and opened yesterday's newspaper to the crossword puzzle I hadn't finished. 7 across. Delayed gratification. 12 letters. The answer would come to me eventually. Part 6. The Airport Trap. At 2:15 p.m., I was settling into my favorite armchair with a fresh cup of Earl Grey and the Spokane Review's Sunday edition. The crossword from yesterday lay completed on my coffee table. Delayed gratification was postponement. My phone buzzed against the wooden surface. Clarissa's name again. I let it ring. The December sun slanted through my living room windows, warming the space where I had spent so many lonely evenings counting the cost of my generosity. Today, the silence felt different. Earned. Intentional. 2:47 p.m. The phone buzzed again. This time I caught the preview of her text. "Dad, where are you?" I turned the phone face down and went back to the sports section. The Seahawks had lost again. Some things never changed. By 3:30 p.m., my phone had buzzed 6 times. I'd finished the newspaper, brewed a second pot of tea, and started organizing the junk drawer on my kitchen table. Amazing what you could accomplish when you weren't rushing around serving people who considered you their personal bellhop. The 7th call came at 3:45. Not Clarissa's name this time. A known number. Probably her parents borrowing someone's phone at the airport. I let that one ring too. Outside, a neighbor was hanging Christmas lights on his porch, his children running around the yard with the manic energy only December afternoons could bring. Normal families, doing normal things. No one stranded anywhere waiting for someone who would never come. 4:15 p.m., my phone started ringing and didn't stop. Clarissa, then the unknown number, then Clarissa again. The buzzing became constant, like an angry wasp trapped against glass. I walked to my kitchen, unplugged my landline from the wall, and turned my cell phone completely off. Perfect silence. I made myself a grilled cheese sandwich and heated up a can of tomato soup, comfort food I hadn't allowed myself in months because every grocery dollar had gone towards subsidizing their lifestyle. The cheese melted perfectly golden. The soup steamed in my favorite mug. Outside, the winter sun was already setting, casting long shadows across my backyard. Somewhere across town, 3 people were probably standing in an airport parking garage arguing about taxi fare, and wondering how their personal servant had the audacity to strand them. The thought made my soup taste even better. By 5 p.m., I'd eaten dinner, loaded the dishwasher, and was deciding what movie to watch. It had been years since I'd had an entire evening to myself without worrying about emergency calls for money or last-minute favors. I was reaching for the remote when someone started pounding on my front door. Not knocking, pounding. The kind of aggressive hammering that rattles the frame and announces pure fury. I set down my tea and walked slowly toward the sound, already knowing exactly who I'd find on the other side. The pounding intensified with each step I took, each blow more violent than the last. Through the pier hole, I saw 3 figures crowded on my small porch like wolves circling prey. I opened the door to find Cody Jenkins' red face inches from mine. "What the hell is wrong with you?" he shouted, pushing past me into my living room without invitation. "This is completely unacceptable behavior from someone your age, David. Absolutely barbaric." Clarissa brought up the rear, her designer coat wrinkled, her makeup smeared. "You humiliated us. Do you have any idea what you've done? My parents had to take a $40 taxi because you decided to get out of my house." My voice cut through their chorus of rage like a blade through silk. They stopped mid-rant, shocked by the steel in my tone. "Excuse me?" Cody's face went from red to purple. "You don't get to make demands here, buddy, not after what you pulled today." "This is my house," I said quietly, not moving from my position by
the door, and I want you out now. Catherine stepped forward, her voice dripping with the kind of condescension she'd perfected over decades of looking down on people like me. "Catherine, you clearly don't understand the magnitude of your mistake. My husband has connections throughout this city. Business connections, social connections. You can't treat people like us this way and expect—" "This was a lesson for you," I interrupted, meeting her gaze steadily. "A lesson about your excessive arrogance and your poor treatment of people you consider beneath you." Carissa's mouth fell open. "A lesson? Who do you think you are to teach anyone anything? You're nobody. I'm someone who finally stopped being your personal bank account and taxi service." I stepped aside and held the door open wider. "The lesson is over. You can leave." Cody jabbed a finger toward my chest, but didn't quite dare touch me. "You have no idea who you're messing with, old man. I've been in this town longer than you've been breathing its air. I know people, important people, people who can make your life very, very difficult." "Is that a threat, Mr. Jenkins?" "It's a promise. You think abandoning elderly people at an airport is something you can do without consequences? You're about to learn exactly how wrong you are." Catherine nodded, her smile sharp enough to cut glass. "Indeed, actions have consequences, David, and yours will be quite public." Clarissa grabbed her father's arm. "Daddy, let's just go. This pathetic old man isn't worth our time." They filed out of my house like a defeated army. But Cody turned back at the threshold. "You'll regret this," he said. "I guarantee it." I closed the door behind them and turned the deadbolt with a satisfying click.
Through the window, I watched them pile into their rental car, still arguing among themselves as they drove away into the December darkness. The house felt cleaner with them gone, as if their presence had left a stain that was only now lifting. But their parting words echoed in the sudden quiet. Public consequences, important people, connections. I walked back to my living room and picked up my tea, still warm in its mug. For the first time in this whole mess, I felt something that might have been concern, but it was overwhelmed by something much stronger. Anticipation. Three days later, I was enjoying my morning coffee and scanning the Spokane Review when I saw my own face staring back at me on page 3. The headline read, "Spokane Businessman Abandons Elderly Couple at Airport During Holiday Storm." My hands went still around the coffee mug. There I was, in black and white, an old photo from my company's website, probably 5 years out of date. Below it, a story that made my blood run cold and my temper flare in equal measure. Cody and Catherine Jenkins, visiting their daughter for Christmas, were left stranded at Spokane International Airport for over 4 hours Sunday when family member David Alvarez failed to appear for a prearranged pickup. The couple, both in their late 50s, claimed they waited in frigid temperatures as a winter storm warning was issued for the region. Winter storm warning. It had been 52 degrees and sunny. "We couldn't believe someone would just abandon us like that," Cody told the reporter. "We called repeatedly, but David Alvarez never answered his phone. We were forced to take an expensive taxi in dangerous weather conditions. At our age, this kind of treatment is not just inconsiderate, it's dangerous." The article went on with quotes about my pattern of erratic behavior and concerns about my mental state. Cody had painted himself and Catherine as helpless victims of a cruel old man who'd suddenly snapped without provocation. No mention of the Christmas dinner rejection, no context about Clarissa's demands or their years of financial exploitation. Just me, the villain, who abandoned poor elderly tourists during a blizzard that existed only in Cody's imagination. I set down my coffee and read the article again slowly. Then a third time. The byline belonged to Patricia Morrison, lifestyle editor. I didn't recognize the name, but I recognized the strategy. Cody had called in favors, used his banking connections to get this story placed exactly where it would do maximum damage to my reputation. Smart. Very smart. For the first time since this whole mess started, I felt a grudging respect for my opponents. They weren't just entitled trust fund brats throwing tantrums. They were strategic, calculating. They understood that in a small city like Spokane, reputation was currency. And one well-placed newspaper article could wipe out decades of hard work. They had declared total war. I pulled out my laptop and began typing names into search engines. Cody Jenkins, Catherine Jenkins,
Clarissa Alvarez. Their social media profiles, their connections, their habits, their weaknesses, everything they'd foolishly made public over the years. If they wanted to play chess, I'd show them what a real strategist looked like. I glanced at my wall calendar. December 18th, 7 days until Christmas. 7 days to plan something they'd never forget. For the next 3 days, I lived in a different world. Not the world where I was David Alvarez, the broken-down old man who let his family walk all over me. This was the world where I was David Alvarez, businessman, tactician, a man who had built something from nothing and wasn't about to let a pack of entitled parasites destroy what I'd worked 40 years to build. My laptop became command central. Social media profiles filled my browser tabs like playing cards in a high-stakes game. Cody Jenkins, retired First National Bank manager, member of the Spokane Country Club, treasurer of the Inland Northwest Business Leaders Association, a man who'd spent his career in positions of trust and influence, a man with a lot to lose. Catherine's Instagram painted a perfect picture of refined living. Charity luncheons, wine tastings, vacation photos from Coeur d'Alene tagged with #BlessedLife. Every post carefully curated to project success and sophistication. Comments from friends praising her elegant taste and inspiring lifestyle. All built on other people's money, including mine. Clarissa's Facebook told the real story. Posts about our beautiful home with photos of the kitchen I'd paid for. Check-ins at expensive restaurants during months when I'd covered their utility bills. A status update from last week. So excited for Christmas dinner with family. Can't wait to show off our hosting skills. Our hosting skills. Our home. Our success. The narcissism was breathtaking. But it was Daniel's LinkedIn profile that gave me the final piece I needed. His recent activity showed a new connection. Patricia Morrison, lifestyle editor at the Spokane Review. The same Patricia Morrison who had written the hatchet job about me. I leaned back in my chair, looking at the evidence spread across my screen. They had made 3 critical mistakes. They had underestimated me completely. They had gone public with their attack, which meant I could go public with my response. They had documented their entire privileged lifestyle online, creating a perfect catalog of hypocrisy. I clicked through to Patricia Morrison's profile. 43 years old, journalism degree from WSU, 15 years at local papers. No previous connection to banking or finance, which meant Cody had reached out cold, probably through someone in his business network. A 5-minute search through local business directories confirmed it. 3 mutual connections between Cody and Patricia's editor. The story hadn't just appeared, it had been planted. Carefully, deliberately. Amateur hour. I opened a new document and began typing. Not a rebuttal to their media attack. Something much better. A timeline. 5 years of financial support documented with bank statements, receipts, and canceled checks. The down payment for their house, $47,000 from my home equity loan. The kitchen renovation, when Clarissa decided granite countertops were essential, $18,000 on my credit card. 60 monthly mortgage payments of $2,800 each, $168,000 and counting. $250,000, more than I'd spent on myself in the last decade.
My phone buzzed with a text from a number I didn't recognize, probably Clarissa trying a new angle. I ignored it and kept working. By evening, I had everything organized in a manila folder thick enough to choke a horse. Bank statements, receipts, photos downloaded from their social media showing off purchases I'd funded. A printed copy of the newspaper article with my handwritten notes in the margins, documenting each lie and distortion. I looked at my wall calendar. December 24th was circled in red, not because it was Christmas, but because it was the perfect day for justice. According to Clarissa's Facebook events, they were hosting Christmas dinner for 12 people, family, friends, neighbors, members of their social circle, the kind of people who read the Spokane Review and formed opinions based on what they saw there, the kind of people who deserved to know the truth. I closed my laptop and walked to the kitchen where my good camera sat waiting, the one I'd bought years ago to document job sites for my business. Time to put it to work, documenting something else entirely. Tomorrow was Christmas Eve. Tomorrow, Cody Jenkins and his family were going to learn what happened when you declared war on someone who actually knew how to fight. Christmas Eve morning dawned gray and cold, the kind of Spokane winter day that made you grateful for warm houses and family gatherings. Too bad I wouldn't be welcome at either. But I had other plans. I laid out my evidence like a lawyer preparing for trial. Bank statements organized by year, each monthly payment highlighted in yellow. Receipts arranged chronologically, showing the pattern of my support for their lifestyle. Photos printed from their social media, Clarissa's new jewelry, their vacation photos, the expensive Christmas decorations currently adorning the house. I'd helped them keep all of it. 12 copies, one for each dinner guest. The newspaper article went on top of each stack, my red pen notes visible in the margins. Lie, written next to Cody's quotes about dangerous weather. False. Beside the claim about my erratic behavior, I highlighted the missing context. 5 years of financial support. I dressed carefully in my best suit, the navy blue one I'd worn to Marisol's funeral. Pressed, ready for another kind of farewell. Today, I was saying goodbye to the man who'd been a doormat for his family. Tonight, I'd be someone who commanded respect. At 6:30 p.m., I loaded my briefcase with the evidence packets and drove to Kendall Yards. Their house glowed with warm light, cars filling the driveway and lining the street. Through the front windows, I could see figures moving around in the dining room. Clarissa playing hostess in the home my money had helped them buy. I parked across the street and checked my watch. 6:45. Perfect. Timing. Late enough that everyone would be seated for dinner. Early enough that they'd still be on the main course. No easy escape for anyone. The front door was unlocked. Of course it was. Clarissa loved to show off how safe their neighborhood was, how they didn't need to worry about security like people in rougher areas. I let myself in quietly, the warm air hitting my face along with the sounds of laughter and conversation from the dining room. And then I heard Catherine say, "But darling, that's not how we do things in our family." Followed by more laughter. Our family, after everything they'd done to exclude me from it. I walked into the dining room carrying my briefcase. 12 faces turned toward me, expressions ranging from surprise to outright horror. Clarissa froze with her wine glass halfway to her lips. Daniel's face went pale. Cody and Catherine looked like they'd seen a ghost. "Good evening, everyone," I said calmly, setting my briefcase on their marble sideboard. "I hope you don't mind me joining your Christmas celebration." Clarissa found her voice first. "David, this is completely inappropriate. You need to leave immediately." "Actually," I said, opening my briefcase and pulling out the first stack of papers, "I think your guests deserve to know who really paid for this dinner, this house, and this lifestyle you've been showing off." A woman I didn't recognize, probably one of Catherine's charity friends, leaned forward with curiosity.
What is he talking about, Clarissa? He's having some kind of episode, Clarissa said quickly. Daniel, call someone. But I was already moving around the table, placing a packet of documents in front of each guest. Here are the bank records. 5 years of financial support, $168,000 in mortgage payments alone, plus the down payment, renovations, furniture, appliances, everything you see around you. The room went silent except for the rustling of papers as 12 people began examining the evidence. I watched their faces change as they absorbed the numbers, the dates, the undeniable proof of my generosity and their deception. "This is," one man began, then stopped, staring at a bank statement. "Outrageous," finished the woman across from him. "Clarissa, why didn't you tell us any of this?" "It's more complicated than it looks. David volunteered to help us. We never asked." "Actually," I interrupted, pulling out the newspaper article, "let's talk about what you did ask for and what you told the media about me." The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. I placed copies of the Spokane Review article on the table, watching as the dinner guests recognized my photo from the unflattering story that had run 3 days earlier. "Now," I said, my voice carrying clearly through the sudden silence, "let's talk about the real manipulators in this family." Cody's face had gone from red to ashen. Catherine sat rigid in her chair, her wineglass forgotten in her hand. "This Mr. Jenkins here used his banking connections to plant this story. Notice how I'm portrayed as unstable and dangerous, abandoning poor elderly people in freezing weather." A gray-haired man in an expensive sweater looked up from the article. "Cody, what is this about?" "The weather was 52 degrees and sunny," I said before Cody could answer. "And they weren't stranded tourists. They were Clarissa's parents, coming to the Christmas dinner I'd been banned from because I wasn't good enough for their company." Catherine finally found her voice. "That's not, we never, Said what, Catherine?" I pulled out my phone, showing screenshots of Clarissa's social media posts. "That I was too low class for your parents? That my Mexican food and working class conversation would embarrass you in front of your educated friends?" The charity friend woman shifted uncomfortably. "Catherine, surely you didn't." "He's twisting everything," Cody blustered, but his voice lacked conviction. "This man has serious mental health issues, the stress of aging, financial problems." "Financial problems?" I almost laughed. "Mr. Jenkins, I've been supporting your daughter and son-in-law to the tune of nearly $3,000 a month for 5 years. The only financial problems here are the ones you're about to have." I turned to address the entire table. "These people have taken $200,000 from me while calling me names behind my back. They've manipulated my son against me, banned me from family gatherings, and when I finally stood up for myself, they tried to destroy my reputation in the newspaper." Daniel spoke for the first time, his voice barely above a whisper. "Dad, I didn't know about the newspaper." "Your wife knew it, and her parents
Orchestrated it. They turned me into a villain for refusing to be their personal ATM and chauffeur." The social dynamic in the room was shifting, like tectonic plates. I could see it in the guests' faces, the gradual realization that everything they'd been told about tonight's generous hosts was built on lies. "This is unconscionable," said an elderly woman in pearls, staring at the bank statements. "Cody, how could you let your daughter take advantage of this man's generosity, then attack him publicly when he stopped enabling it?" Cody's carefully maintained facade was crumbling. "You don't understand the full situation." "I understand perfectly," the woman interrupted. "This man has been supporting your family financially while you treated him like hired help. And when he finally said no, you tried to ruin his reputation." Catherine's voice came out strangled. "He abandoned us at the airport." After you told me I wasn't welcome at Christmas dinner because my presence would be inappropriate for your parents, I said calmly. After 5 years of paying your bills while you looked down on me for my ethnicity and education level. The silence was deafening. 12 people staring at Cody and Catherine with expressions ranging from disgust to embarrassment for having associated with them. Clarissa made one last desperate attempt to control the narrative. Everyone, please, this is a family matter that's gotten out of hand. No, I said firmly. This stopped being a family matter when you made it public, when you used the newspaper to attack my character, when you decided my reputation was acceptable collateral damage for your pride. I looked around the table at faces I didn't recognize, but who now knew exactly who I was. I wanted you all to know the truth before you read about David Alvarez in the paper again, because you will read about me again, but next time it'll be the real story. I closed my briefcase and straightened my tie. I'd told them that night, enjoy the rest of your dinner. It's the last one I'll be paying for. As I walked toward the door, the eruption began behind me. Voices raised in accusation, questions demanding answers, the sound of a carefully constructed social facade collapsing in real time. It was the most beautiful Christmas music I'd ever heard. The letter arrived on a Tuesday morning in March, delivered by certified mail, heavy with the weight of legal consequences. I signed for it at my front door, the spring air smelling of new growth and possibility, instead of the winter desperation that had marked those dark December days. Notice of default, final demand for payment. 3 months of missed mortgage payments had caught up with Daniel and Clarissa like a tsunami of reality. $8,400 in arrears. 14 days to bring the account current or face foreclosure proceedings on the house I'd helped them buy. I set the letter aside and returned to my coffee, reading it the way you'd read news about distant weather. Interesting, but not my problem anymore. My phone had been ringing for weeks with increasingly desperate calls. Clarissa's number was blocked after the first hysterical voicemail. Cody and Catherine, whose social standing in Spokane had evaporated like morning mist after their Christmas dinner humiliation, had tried their luck too. Even Daniel had called, and I'd ignored him, curious how long it would take him to swallow his pride. The answer was 97 days. He knocked on my door that Thursday evening, no longer the confident man who'd excluded me from Christmas dinner, but someone who looked like he'd aged a decade in 3 months. Dark circles under his eyes, his expensive suit wrinkled, the smell of desperation clinging to him like cheap cologne. "Dad," he said when I opened the door, "we need to talk." I stepped aside to let him in, noting how he looked around my house like he was seeing it for the first time. The new furniture I'd bought with my first mortgage-free paycheck, the fresh paint on walls that hadn't been updated in 8 years, and the repairs I'd finally been able to afford now that I wasn't subsidizing someone else's American dream. "Nice place," he said quietly. "It's what happens when you spend money on yourself instead of people who don't." He perched on the edge of my couch like he was afraid to get comfortable. "Dad, I need you to know how sorry I am about everything. Christmas dinner, the newspaper article, the way Clarissa, the way we treated you." "Go on." "I didn't know about Cody planting that story. I swear I didn't. When I found out..." He ran his hands through his hair. "Jesus, Dad. The things they said about you behind your back. The way they talked about our family. About Mom's memory." My jaw tightened at the mention of Marisol, but my voice stayed level. "And what exactly did they say about your mother?" "That she knew her place better than you knew yours. That she understood boundaries." "I should have defended you," he said. "I should have stood up to them years ago." "Yes," I said simply. "You should have." We sat in silence for a long moment, the weight of 5 years of mistakes filling the space between us. "The house is in foreclosure," Daniel said finally. I know. We can't make the payments without... He stopped, realizing how it sounded. Without my help, I finished. Without the money I was sending every month while you let your wife's family treat me like garbage. Do you know how much money I sent you over 5 years? He nodded miserably. The mortgage payments, the down payment, everything else. Over $200,000. $237,468, I corrected. I know the exact amount because I finally did something I should have done years ago. I added it up. His face crumpled. Dad, I'm so sorry. I don't know how to fix this. You can't fix it, son. That money is gone. But more importantly, those years are gone. Maybe we could start over, he said, a flicker of hope in his eyes. Are you asking me to resume the mortgage payments? The hope died instantly. We're going to lose everything, Dad. The house, Clarissa's respect, her parents' approval. I don't know what I'll do. You'll figure it out, I said, not unkindly. The same way I figured out how to live without a son who respected me. The same way I learned to spend Christmas alone while you celebrated with people who thought I was beneath them. He started to cry then, quietly, like a man who'd run out of other options. I lost you, didn't I? I chose them over you, and now I've lost you forever. I studied him for a long moment. Daniel, you didn't lose me. You gave me away. There's a difference. Is there any chance you could forgive me? I've forgiven you months ago, and I meant it. But forgiveness doesn't mean going back to the way things were. It doesn't mean pretending this didn't happen or that I'm going to resume paying for a lifestyle that came with the condition I be grateful for scraps of your attention. Then what does it mean? I stood and walked to the mantel where Marisol's photo sat next to a new picture, me with Rosa and her family at Easter dinner. The first holiday I'd spent with people who actually wanted me there. It means that if you want a relationship with me, you'll have to build it from scratch. It means showing me respect instead of demanding I earn it. And it means that the next time someone, your wife, her parents, anyone, tries to exclude me from family gatherings, you'll remember who actually acts like family. He nodded slowly, understanding perhaps for the first time that respect wasn't something you could take for granted. The house, he asked quietly, is not my problem anymore? You're a grown man, Daniel. Figure it out like grown men do. Get a job that pays enough to cover your bills, sell the house and buy something you can afford, stop living beyond your means and expecting other people to subsidize your choices. He stood, shoulders straighter than when he had arrived. You're right about all of it. I know. At the door, he turned back. Dad, for what it's worth, seeing you stand up for yourself at Christmas dinner, I was proud of you. Embarrassed and angry, but proud too. Good, I said. Maybe there's hope for you yet. After he left, I poured myself a glass of the good whiskey and stepped onto my back porch. Spring was coming to Spokane, the trees beginning to bud, the air warming with promise. In 4 months, I'd be 63. Marisol had been gone for 8 years. I'd wasted 5 of those years being a doormat for people who didn't appreciate sacrifice. I wasn't planning to waste any more. My phone buzzed with a text from Rosa. Dinner Sunday. The kids want to show you their school projects. I typed back, wouldn't miss it. Real family, it turned out, was something you found with people who actually wanted you there. Everything else was just expensive theater, and I was done buying tickets to shows where I wasn't welcome on stage. The whiskey tasted like freedom, and the future looked exactly as bright as I was willing to make it.
If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left.